Thanks so much, Bob, for the introduction. Really a pleasure to be here talking about this topic. It's so incredibly important right now, I think, for us all to feel like we have a way to contribute to really helping the world heal, helping things kind of get on a better trajectory. We're just talking about all the fires out west, and I know we're all feeling the different tensions in the world in different ways. And so hopefully this session can give you folks that are involved in small businesses a way to think about how you can kind of leverage your power and your voice. So I'm Kara Peck. I'm joined by my friend, Pete Dignan, who also runs a certified B corporation. And so he'll jump in a moment. But before we do that, I want us to spend a moment talking about who BLab is. So I work for BLab. I lead growth and partnerships for the organization here in the US and Canada. And BLab is an organization that's really founded to help support economic systems change so that we can really move towards this vision of an inclusive, equitable, and regenerative economic system that actually provides this shared well-being on a healthy planet. That the idea that businesses and investors and kind of the economic system as a whole really has an incredibly important role to play in this transition to a healthier planet and more equity. And so that's kind of our mission, big picture, and you all probably know us best for the B Corp certification. We also have another B Corp leader here on the call, which is wonderful, but really this is kind of our broad-based vision. And it's not just BLab that is part of this movement. You know, we exist within this ecosystem that really has been changing, and we've seen this shift over the past decade, moving from this idea of shareholder capitalism to stakeholder capitalism. The idea that we're really in business to drive dollars to shareholders or to business owners, to the idea that we are in business because we want to create a better world. We want to offer value to our stakeholders. We want to employ people. We want to provide products and services that are helpful and supportive and add value to the world instead of extract value. And, you know, we know that we as humans, we're all consumers and employees, and we as humans, we care about this. So this is no surprise to any of us that this movement has really gotten underway with the push from consumers and employees to move in this direction. And, you know, I think that really happened originally around products, and we were all looking at what products are better for us, whether that was organic products, LEED certified buildings, and this interest has really deepened to go beyond just this idea of what we're seeing in products to what the company is doing behind those products that we know and love. And this idea that we really are seeing this broad-based support for this idea of, these are very sort of technical words, expanding fiduciary duty, but what that means is that shift from corporations really just being about driving profit to really thinking about broader based impacts. And it's incredible to see some of this new research showing that even among people that identify as conservative, they broadly support this idea of businesses expanding their duties to be really requiring them to deliver value to stakeholders, to community, to employees, to the environment, and not just to shareholders. And we're really seeing this play out in real time. This has been, a really incredible year for us to see large corporations stepping forward to say that they do have a purpose that is broader than just creating profit. And we've seen this as a huge shift from the historic ideas that Milton Friedman put forward now 50 years ago, and this shift to say that even large corporations believe that these things matter. But in the end, we really haven't seen it play out. And so in this year, in 2020, when COVID hit, we know that a lot of these corporations were really espousing to do things differently. And at the end of the day, we were seeing, we're still seeing CEO bonuses at the same time that there's really large scale layoffs. And a lot of these things haven't added up. And so our community of certified B corporations has really said, join us, let's get to work and doing the real work. It's wonderful that you have those ideas, but it's really us, the small business community, that has been living this for a long time. And so this idea of leveraging this collective voice, and so this is what we'll talk more about, is this idea of small businesses coming together to really leverage their voice and leverage their impact in a bigger way. And so this was actually a full page ad that was taken out in the New York Times that did just that, that brought these small businesses together to have a louder voice and to speak to that larger trend. And so really, these are companies that believe in this idea of interdependence. This is a declaration of interdependence that B Corps sign on to, that says we know that we are dependent on each other in this world as as stakeholders, as humans, as business leaders. We're dependent on each other and on this world, and that we should not be just extracting value for ourselves. And this idea of interdependence really is what a lot of folks are talking about as this realization in this year in 2020 between the racial injustice uprisings and COVID and all of the challenges we're facing, is that we have to be in this together. We can't not solve these things on our own. And so this is really then, the idea that underpins the B Corp movement. And so it shouldn't be a surprise that folks are really starting to talk more and more about the B Corp movement as being this model, being a solution to a lot of the challenges that we face, that we really, if we want to solve climate, if we want to solve racial injustice, we have to do it. We have to do it together, and we have to do it in a way that's much deeper than we have really thought of in the past. And so that brings us to this idea of what is a certified B Corporation. It is essentially what organic or fair trade is to a product, B Corp is to a company. There we go. And so what do certified B Corps do? And this is really where you think about what the individual company is doing. They are meeting very high standards of social and environmental performance. They're meeting this legal requirement. So this is where we were talking about that expansion of fiduciary duty. They're actually changing their legal structure to be able to allow them to consider a broader set of stakeholders. That becomes incredibly important as you bring on any outside investment, potentially have a transition of ownership of the company. So even as a small business, this idea of really embedding those values into your legal DNA is really important. And then they're making all of that transparent. So this movement has been growing dramatically. It's right in line with the growing of these concepts in general, as we were talking about over the last decade. We've also seen the Certified B Corp movement really increase dramatically, and we now have over 3,500 Certified B Corporations around the world. This is very much a global movement, and really one that has been led by small businesses. So you'll see a lot of larger brands on this slide. Everything from Tom's Shoes to the Body Shop or the Guardian, which is an exciting one. In the last year or so, but truly what you're not seeing on this slide is that there are, probably 75%, if not more, of companies in this community are small businesses. And so the beauty of this is that small businesses are able to come in and join again in this collective voice with these larger brands. So that as these companies are talking about B Corp certification, as these companies are talking about what it means to really help to change the world as a business, that there's alignment and leverage in that message. Actually, I already touched on that. So what I do want to say though is that the assessment really covers this broad scope of impact. This is a free tool. So B Corps that want to be certified and want to kind of leverage that collective voice become part of that certified community. BLab is the nonprofit that certifies that impact. But this is a free tool for any company to use. And there's actually 100,000 companies around the world that use this tool to just measure and improve impact. This is the place to start. If you want to figure out how can my company really be a force for good, be creating positive impact, you can go in and use this tool and look at how are we doing when it comes to community, the environment. If you're a solopreneur, no problem, you won't see the worker section. It's actually there are over 75 versions of this based on your industry and size and location in the world. So this is the right place to start. This is where you dig in to understand how can I, as my business, based on my size, based on my industry, be creating positive impact. And then once you continue to work to improve, then you can decide if you want to join this broader community of companies that are really on that same journey. And so there's the assessment piece, and then there's this legal piece. Just a point of clarification here, when we're talking about certified B corporations, that is the whole. That is both the assessment and the validation by BLab, and then the benefit corporation legal structure is what companies do to embed those values into their legal DNA. So let's say maybe you're on this call thinking about starting a business. You can do this from the get-go. So you can actually incorporate as a benefit corporation in 38 states. You can actually embed this into your to the operating agreement of an LLC. The language is on our website. Again, accessible to all. So this is something you can do whether you're just getting started, whether you want to be a certified B Corp or not. You can really incorporate this into your legal DNA from the start. And on that note, it's been incredible to see, again, with this, unprecedented year that we've had in all of the different ways. Another piece is that we've actually seen companies with this legal structure, with a legal structure that specifically says that shareholders are not the only, they're not the only one that matters to this business. And there's of course been a lot of question over the years whether this is a model that the public markets would accept. And so as folks are thinking about starting a business, thinking about scaling a business, thinking about perhaps exit plans or investments, what we've seen this year is we've seen multiple companies actually go forward an IPO as a benefit corporation with that legal structure in place, adopt it as a public company, and we've really seen that there's broad support. So incredibly, the folks that have taken this to a shareholder vote to make this transition to that legal entity that gives them the right to include to value all stakeholders has actually gotten 99% approval from their shareholders, including a lot of those large institutional investors. So for folks, no matter where you are on your journey as a small business, you're just starting out, you can incorporate as a benefit corporation. You're operating a business, you can get on the impact assessment and really understand your impact. You're thinking about an exit, you can know that these things won't hold you back. And eventually, hopefully, we hope that you'll kind of join us and really leverage your collective voice as a business that is using business as a force for good. One last way that this is happening is through acquisitions. So we saw Happy Family, which is a small business back in 2011, certified as a B Corporation, was acquired by Dignan, who is a global consumer products company. And they've actually inspired Dignan from the inside to go on this journey as a global company. What an incredible impact, what an incredible legacy as this company that started out with impact and mission at their core to be able to join this larger company and not lose that. They're still a certified B Corporation. They're still retaining those values, and they've inspired the global business. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Pete Dignan to talk a little bit more about his experience and examples and kind of why folks might do this and get on this journey.
Thanks, Kara. Thanks very much. So at this point, you may be part of a business that has these B Corp-like values baked into your DNA right from the beginning, or you might be a business that's kind of waking up to this idea of stakeholder capitalism and deciding that maybe this is a direction you want to shift into. And either way, it's useful to think about some of the benefits of becoming a certified B, both for internal conversations and also then in terms of how you put this into action in the world. And so these are some examples of reasons that companies choose to certify and become a member of this community. One is the ability to amplify their voice, partly through the integrity that comes with being able to display the Certified B Corp seal, and also to be part of this community of companies that you can point to and say, just like Patagonia, just like Ben & Jerry's, just like New Belgium Brewing, we're in that vein of companies. Another is to attract and engage talent. And I teach a class for the University of Colorado. It's part of continuing education in the business school called Certificate in Corporate Social Responsibility. And just last night, actually, we had our session on B Corps and becoming a certified B, and everyone was learning about the B impact assessment. And the students in the class are all working professionals. They identified attracting, engaging, and retaining talent as the highest value benefit that they could see in an exercise that we did last night. It's a competitive world out there, and particularly millennial workers and younger workers really want to work for companies that have a meaningful purpose. And so that's a very strong, compelling reason. Benchmarking and improving impact. Many companies, whether they certify or not, use the B impact assessment to figure out how they compare with other companies in their performance on social and environmental measures, as well as governance and the whole picture. And so the tool is useful to basically create a roadmap year to year of the areas in which you want to try to improve your impact and your performance. Networking and building relationships. This is an incredibly supportive community. You saw the slide earlier that Kara displayed of the many companies that are kind of known brands or name brands. I've been involved with 3 certified B Corps over the last 10 years. And in each case, I've reached out to other B Corps to ask questions about how they're doing things, what's working for them. And the community is incredibly responsive, incredibly supportive. There are also some really strong initiatives going at any given point in time. At this moment, there's some strong initiatives around anti-racism and also around climate and getting to net zero carbon. And the community really comes together and collaborates to support one another in pursuing those objectives. And then protecting your mission. And I think Kara covered well enough the legal framework stuff. So next slide. Yeah, so the slides here are basically just kind of develop those ideas that were on that original slide, but obviously customers want to buy from brands that connect with their values. And so seeing that B seal is an indication to them that you are one of those companies. Aligning with other leaders, this is one of the campaigns that I mentioned, the one about anti-racism and about net zero, but encouraging folks to use their voice to vote and be engaged politically is another initiative. And so joining together with, as a small business, you may not feel like you've got the leverage and the impact to make that big of a difference in communication, but when you come together with the B community to do it, you can really make your voice heard. Some data about attracting talent and engaging talent. They're probably, as somebody who has spent the last 20 years as a CEO in small businesses, there's probably no more essential activity for an organization than to be able to find the best people and keep them happy and excited to be part of the mission. So this is a great tool for doing that. On the benchmarking, what we find when we look at companies that have been in the B Corp movement for a while, you can look at the history of their B impact scores, and you can look at the history of their the shifts that they've made in terms of the way they achieve impact. And it's really common. It's funny because B Corps we don't really sit around and compare scores, and say, oh, your score's awesome or mine's terrible or whatever. But we do look at that arc that folks follow when they try to improve their impact and improve their performance over time. The Let's Get to Zero, the Net Zero campaign is super inspiring to me. I think climate change is most certainly one of the, I don't know how you could think of a more critical issue or a threat to healthy society, healthy economy, healthy planet. And I was on a call just a few days ago that was part of this net zero program, and the number of B Corps that show up, make commitments, volunteer, get engaged, and commit to take action is really impressive. And it also creates some, I'd say, healthy and constructive peer pressure to get signed on and join that movement. So I really value this aspect of the work, the impact. This is another example of B Corps tend to solve sticky problems. They tend to take the time and the effort to think creatively about how to solve a problem. Rhino Foods, in this case, recognized that for many workers, just getting living paycheck to paycheck can be really difficult. And so creating an income advance program was a way to help create financial wellness for many of their employees. And the way they did it was very creative, and it created a super engaged and super loyal workforce. You may have heard of Lisa Mattresses, and their bedding company. They stepped up in connection with the COVID crisis to create some solutions and get some things out the door to help healthcare workers to create create environments where we could address the shortage of beds and resources to address COVID. And so I think that's the end of the presentation part. And so I'll kick it back to Kara and we can take your questions.
Well, thanks. Yeah, let's open it up to the panel. I think I'll start if that's okay. There's an elephant in the middle of the room that I'm wondering if you can address. Some of the benefits that you listed are proxies to profit, but what I seldom see is profit itself as being a benefit to being a B Corp. I am in the camp of wanting to go to B Corps, and I do, and I'm very happy if I feel, even though I'm spending more money to do that, because I am, as Scott was when he was describing himself, I'm of that same ilk, connected to something beyond whatever the service or whatever the product I'm purchasing. But I'm wondering if there is data to support that, that the other bottom lines, if we think of a triple bottom line, the other bottom lines related to planet and related to social justice, if addressing those bottom lines actually feeds back into the bottom line of profit. That's the elephant in the middle of the room, right?
No, great question. And of course, yes, it is. This is certainly the question that a lot of companies have. I have two answers. The first is that there is some data certainly to show, I would say, not so much on profitability per se, but on both cost savings and revenue, which of course are drivers of profitability. So there is some data. Truthfully, we are still working on kind of gathering some data, and I think we're at a place now where we can probably do a better job of being able to point to specific data as our community has scaled. One of the tricky things, of course, is with a community of private businesses that a lot of the financial data is, they're not making it publicly accessible. So we're in a process of gathering some additional data that I think will help, figuring out how to sort of be able to tell that story in a way that respects confidentiality. But there is some data to show. I mean, I think one of the slides Pete had was that B Corps, there was a study that showed that in a sample, fairly robust sample of B Corps versus non-B Corps, that B Corps had 3 times faster growing sales. We've seen good data around sales lift when companies are marketing using the B Corp certification versus prior to using it. And so there is some good data there. Definitely a lot of good data on cost savings related to employee retention and engagement, which B Corps have quantitatively higher engagement. I think the stat is like 46% higher engagement of B Corps versus non-B Corps. But the other point that I want to make, so I think the answer is yes, there is data pointing towards increased profitability. That case needs to continue to get stronger, which I think it will as our community is scaling. But I think the flip side of that is that we believe that the piece of the B Corp movement that actually is looking at the kind of fundamentals of our economy. One side of that, which we talked about, is the benefit corporation legal structure, right? Which actually changes fiduciary duty, so that we say the purpose of the business is not just about creating profit. Yes, it's important. Of course, businesses won't exist without profit, and we do think that B Corp is driving that, but it is not the whole. It is not the whole picture, and there is work to be done, not only at the company level, but within the broader economy. And so BLab just recently put out a policy paper that's really talking about additional policy changes that will support this idea being adopted across the private sector. So it's not just the companies that sort of want to do good, that are mission driven, that are then competing against all of these other companies that are extracting value, not adding value, really, putting all of those costs back on society, so that it is a requirement that all companies are operating in this way, so that we can level the playing field. Because I think the reality is a lot of things, yes, increase profitability, but not all of it. Not all of it is going to increase profitability. And there's things that we need to be doing as businesses and frankly, as a society, that aren't always going to drive profit. And so I think it's both. And so when we have this conversation, we really try to point to both sides of the coin.
Okay, thank you.
And I'll just add an analogy that I heard just the other day. Businesses need to make a profit. They have to do that if they're going to continue to exist and continue to pursue their purpose and their mission. My body needs to make red blood cells, but it's not my whole reason for living, right? It's not the be all end all justification for everything I do. And so I think, Kara was trying to make that point, that as ethical leaders, there are some really good reasons to do many of the things that B Corps do, other than to enhance profits. So both and.
Absolutely. Go ahead, Isabel.
Yeah, I'll hop in. And you sort of started touching upon this, but I had a question about just like the time and money that goes into becoming B Corp certified as a business. So, and I've seen this more in like organic certification with food, and this is something that interests me, but often smaller businesses already follow a lot of the B Corp certification guidelines, but they don't have maybe the employee or the capital to put into becoming certified. Are there any ways to subsidize access or to help increase or democratize that access to becoming certified? Because as you mentioned, it is an advantage for a consumer or for attracting talent. So how can we leverage the playing field for businesses?
I've been talking a lot. I'm happy to take a stab at it, but Pete, I want to give you space too if you've got that.
Sure, I have a couple thoughts on this, Isabel. First of all, let's acknowledge that there is some effort required to complete the B impact assessment. It's not a trivial assessment. It's actually a high bar, and it's pretty demanding. So there is some time to do that. There's also an annual certification fee that small businesses pay to be a member of this community once they've achieved that bar. But there are some things that you can do to ease the cost of doing that. And one has to do with tapping into the community of students around the world who are willing to contribute some of the effort to completing the B impact assessment. There's an organization called B Academics, which is a community of people like myself that teach in business schools around the world, and who are advancing the B economy discussion in those business classes. And very often students are willing and able and interested to consult pro bono with small businesses that would like to get certified. So that's one way you can get some help.
And I think to add on to it, it's definitely something we're thinking about, specifically related to Black, Indigenous, and people of color owned businesses. And I think, it's true what you're saying, that a lot of small businesses in particular practice a lot of these things, but haven't codified a lot of those practices. And that is necessary in order to validate, right? It's as a third-party certification, we have to be able to see that is actually happening and know that it will continue to happen in the future. And that's a real challenge for resource-strapped businesses, and especially when we add, the increased challenges and, the racial inequities that people of color are bringing, and so or are facing rather. And so we're trying to solve for that right now. And we're trying some innovations around working with kind of cohort groups that can support each other. And that's one of the the big benefits of the B Corp certification, is that it's a community. And so trying to extend that out ahead of certification so that companies can work together, support each other, and be kind of peer coaches. And there's also some great, whether they're coming from the academic world or coming from the consulting world, folks that run this type of a kind of group engagement that can help to bring the cost down a lot. So we're trying things like that, and hopefully in 2021 we're hoping to be able to scale those things a little bit more to be able to have more equitable access.
Great, thanks for your answers.
I will say that just in terms of an investment, like as a small business, as any business, you have to make investments of your time, of your money. You know, there are necessary certifications or equipment, right? That at any given moment you have to decide, are we doing this or are we not? You know, and just you know, coming from the perspective of a small business with a B Corp certification, I can definitely hands down say that the B Corp certification, like going through with it, making it official, has been for our business one of the best, if not the best, investment of our time and resources. And I would say that specifically because it's just kind of like, it's like anything, you know, you can just get the certification, go through with it, see where you stand, stamp it, you know, on your website, on your product, call it a day. And that would probably be a big benefit to your company. Like our company has gotten involved in, you know, going to some of the retreats or the summits, participating whenever we can, reaching out, creating relationships with other businesses, including those that would, you know, I think in any other, you know, world be kind of odd, like we're reaching out to our competitors, you know, but there's this sort of feeling of community, and as Cara alluded to earlier, like just it's almost like kind of magical feeling, like where this is a tough time, you know, we're in a really tough time, like there's a lot of worry, you know, there's a lot of stress on individuals and on businesses, and this is the kind of group that gives you so much more. This is the kind of network that gives you so much more than what you feel like you almost put into it, you know, like just like motivation, inspiration, you know, resources for actual improvement, you know, and so I would say that, yes, it's definitely a bit grueling, you know, to go through, but it gives it what it gives, I think, is your investment is returned a millionfold.
Well said, Adrienne.
There's definitely a lot of value here, and I think you know, what was discussed a little bit was some of the hard to measure benefits of things that happen when small businesses network, like that sort of cross-pollination and the symbiosis that happens kind of naturally with small businesses. And it is hard to quantify at times just how valuable that can be, whether it is, you know, maybe it's hard to just strictly monetize, but it is something where you do see improved margins, or you do see yourself marketed in a better way. One question I did have is, if a business were to go through the process and get the stamp and get the B logo on the website and all of that, what's being done to educate consumers about this process? Because to me, as a business owner, that would make the most sense, is where, yes, I want to do it for my own ethical reasons, and I want to operate a business that's fulfills all these requirements. It sounds wonderful, but when I put that B on a product, will the consumer know what that means? Or are there efforts out there to educate the consumer so that they know what that means when they see it?
Yeah, I can take a first pass at this and then others jump in. But you're absolutely right that we need to continue to educate consumers, and the primary way that we've done this, and I think seen success, is by really working with the companies in the community to use their voice. And so I think what has resulted in the past couple of years in an increase in consumer awareness, although I don't have the data yet to speak to. We're kind of in a process of doing some consumer awareness surveys, but it is the larger companies joining. And so I think it's this idea of small companies being able to leverage the brand power of large companies. So when you have, you know, Horizon Milk with the B Corp logo on it, and when you have you know, Tom's Shoes, and when you have all of these companies that people think of, oh, that's a good company, oh, it's a B Corp, and you know, and those large companies are leveraging their brand power to do some of that education, it really it is powerful in a way that you wouldn't be able to access that kind of you know, brand power outside of that kind of community. So that's the primary way. I mean, BLab is certainly doing things, but we're I think we recognize that our companies are the most powerful way to spread the brand.
And you do see that once it does kind of create a certain network of small businesses. That have you seen that there is relationships formed and cross-pollination that exists simply because they kind of join this fraternity, if you will, of B Corp companies?
Pete, you want to take that one?
Yeah, having been involved in several, say, businesses with under 100 employees that are in this movement, I can say that the cross-pollination really does occur, that we frequently would reach out to other B Corps. We're lucky to be here in Colorado where there are about 100 certified B Corps, but we've certainly also reached out beyond our state to B Corps that were in a similar space, that were doing similar work. You know, folks like, I was at a renewable energy company, and so we would reach out to organizations like Native Energy, for example, that were in the same space, and also certified Bs. And I think Adrian made the point that it might seem a little weird at first because it's like, wait, aren't those competitors? But there's a healthy respect, you know, for the competitive nature of the relationship. There's also a healthy respect for being committed to the same business values and wanting to promote the value of doing that, right? So we talk about, okay, how do we let more people know what it means to be a certified B Corp and make that actually sticky for us with our customers. So yeah, definitely saw that, Riley.
I just wanted to add in that it does seem kind of like a little bit like the mafia. I always say, like, you're in, but then you're kind of like in, you know, you're protected, like, because we're a little business. We have, you know, we're a small surf and yoga camp. We can have 10 guests per week, but we've had, for example, Clean Canteen made a video about this experience, you know, and they put that all over the front and center of their website. You know, Clean Canteen certainly is going to have a much larger audience than Bodhi Surf and Yoga, right? We've made partnerships with Patagonia. Just you find that with these similar values and mindsets, you find ways to work together, you know. And I would say that there's some effort that goes into that of reaching out, but there's almost like this bar where, like, you're a B Corp, they're a B Corp, you already know that you're going to agree. You don't even have to sort of discuss certain things that you might with other, you know, potential partners or you know, people who are going to be sourcing, right? Companies that are going to be sourcing. So it's really quite interesting. And then the other thing I was going to mention, just going back to like brand awareness, it's been really cool to see a lot of these bigger companies come on and then understand, like, this is such a huge marketing point, you know? So when Athleta becomes a B Corp, and then in every storefront, they're putting, we're a B Corp now, you know, that's a huge benefit for all the little fish too, you know, that now we're getting more, you know, like, because again, like, we have 10 visitors coming per week, and we have our B Corp stuff everywhere. And I would say that some people know about B Corp and others don't, you know, but we certainly talk about it a lot because we're proud of it. We're excited to share this, and we want people to go on. And we think that as a business, one of the main things that we can do is educate our consumers about the importance of B Corp so that they can go home and utilize, you know, the website where you can go in and by industry, by location, find B Corps in your area or in the, you know, the products you want to purchase, and simply, you know, understanding that the consumer, you know, in the year 2020 wants to do more with their dollar than just mindlessly throw it away, and especially to companies that are doing horrible things and, you know, exacerbating the strange position that we find ourselves in now, you know.
Thanks for adding that. We're actually out of time, but I want to try to stretch it just a little bit, primarily because I know Riley and I know Scott, and they are owner-driven. So I'm it was a question I meant to ask right away, and that is, what definition do we have for small when it comes to business? And I wonder if you have any thoughts on what about the single owner who's driving a company, starting a company, that degree of small. One owner, one staff, all the same. Is there any potential for, can they get involved with this at that level?
Yeah, so I'll take that, Bob. Everbetter, which is everbetter.co, is a one-person company. You're looking at him. It's a management consulting business. I help purpose-driven businesses and nonprofits to move away from hierarchy and bureaucracy and toward more distributed authority, high transparency, human-centered ways of working. And my target market is companies like B Corps, right? Social enterprises and businesses that are trying to make a difference in the world. As a single member public benefit corporation, it's worth it for me to go through the effort to certify and to be officially a member of that community, because it gives me access to those 3,500 companies as potential customers. And so most of my clients over the last 3 years have been other certified B Corps around the United States, from Boston to San Francisco and everywhere in between. And so, yeah, I mean, just speaking for one guy and one company, definitely worth it. And practical. It was not an onerous lift.
Okay. All right. Thanks. We do have to honor the time because we have another session coming up on the hour. But I would like to, it's kind of a good way to close and to remind people that we've deliberately kept the sessions short. This could go on for much longer, and it could have multiple sessions to it and so on. But that the intention is for this to be inspiration, not only for people on the panel and people off the screen thinking, but perhaps even using this session, which is being recorded, and it's going to be produced and I think available maybe within a week or so, that maybe you will be able to use it with your own audiences. Maybe just the presentation, maybe the full session, as a prompt for taking this session and taking this discussion and bringing it to a larger audience, perhaps people that are interested in your own business or whatever that might be. So Pete and Cara, thanks so much. Panel, thanks. I think we dug in a little bit and we've got a little traction, and let's act on that.
Yeah, and just a reminder that,
Thanks,
Cara, Pete, thank you so much for your time. And I was trying to, as you were talking, put down the links to everything you mentioned there in that resources. So in that link I shared earlier, if people want to return to that, I tried to capture what you were saying in terms of B academics, B assessment, Everbetter, Clean Canteen, all of that is there. So I know it was a lot of information in a short time, but hopefully the resources helps the panelists and attendees check out some of that information that was mentioned there. So thank you again so much for joining us.
And Bill, I like
Thank you.
thinking that everybody has contact information.
Yes, everyone on the panel is connected by email, and then all of the attendees in that document I shared has the LinkedIn profile for everyone who's on the panel, as well as our speakers. So you can reach out via LinkedIn to them, and then our panelists can talk amongst themselves by email as well.
Okay. Scott?
I just want to thank Cara and Pete as well, and everybody else for participating, because like you said, it's inspirational for us. And my role, like we're alluding, as an independent contractor, sole proprietor, is to participate and to inspire. And that's part of what I get out of this discussion as well today. I am going to participate in this certification process as of today and inspire others to do so in the immediate future, because really that's what we all have to do. All of us, everybody listening to us, if we don't participate ourselves as individuals, we get nowhere as a community or as a society. So these conversations are necessary. If you could see all these thoughts going through my head as I listen today, it would be busy. But these things are necessary, and the B Corp process is a mandatory part of our future. So I will participate and inspire going forward.
Wow, the Bandoni last name, we had two powerful closings there. I think the other Bandoni stole it there. Thank you, Scott.
We're no rookies.
Thank you so much, Scott. That was a great way to close.
Thanks to everybody.
Thank you all. Have a great afternoon.
Take
Be
care.
well.